So with the Classic WoW beta underway, many people are exploring the Classic WoW world for the first time. There are a lot of secrets and really cool places in the Classic WoW world, so with that being said, here are 7 secret zones in Classic WoW. Number 7 on this list is the South Seas Island. So guys, at the very bottom of Tanaris, there is actually a really cool secret. If you go to the most southern part of Tanaris, you can actually see something way off in the distance. There is an island that is way past the fatigue line in the ocean that you can't actually access, at least not by normal means. It is very far off past the fatigue line, so you need to have quite a lot of speed if you want to get there. To cover the vast distance of the ocean, you need to have some water walking ability and enough speed. If you do this right, you can actually make your way to the South Seas Island and arrive there without dying. Many WoW players back in the day were very curious as to what is actually here, and what is here is actually quite a lot. Blizzard for some reason put in these islands into the game, and I actually believe that they initially intended for a boat to come here, but doing this method you can actually get here yourself. You have 2 separate islands that are all to yourself, and there's a bunch of buildings and gnome architecture that you can explore, such as this little house that I can go up with the elevator. There also looks to be a goblin mining rig that is in the ocean in between these 2 islands. There's not much on this rig, but it's kinda cool that it's there. And then there is a second island in addition to the first island we explored. There's not much going on here, it's kind of abandoned, but it's very interesting to speculate as to what Blizzard actually intended to use these islands for. Perhaps Blizzard was going to create a quest chain where you actually take a boat to go to these islands, but they never actually put it into the game. If you have any ideas of what these islands were initially intended to be for, please leave that down in the comments below. Number 6 on this list is the GM Island. So the GM Island is something that is basically a rumour in World of Warcraft. Many people have been debating as to whether or not it is real or not. The GM Island is absolutely real, it's just that it's pretty much impossible to get there without doing some under the table means to get there. And I still believe it's actually in the game files in Battle for Azeroth. However, back in the days of World of Warcraft Classic, some people figured out a way to get to GM Island by themselves. As the name would suggest, this is actually a place where GMs at Blizzard would actually log in and log out. They would go here to do some stuff remotely, and it's just a secret island that GMs of Blizzard can actually go in and chill out at. I don't know if it's still being used today, but in World of Warcraft Classic, this was a very secret place in the game. There isn't actually any official way to get here yourself, and the closest point is Teldrassil. If you can figure out a way to go past the fatigue line by using some illicit methods, then you can maybe access the GM Island in World of Warcraft Classic. And this is what the footage you are looking at today is. The GM Island itself is pretty interesting. It is basically a building on land that has some very cool stuff inside of it. You can find bottles of wine and a guild hall style of building that GMs on the server would likely come in to chat and socialize with each other. There are some rumours that players actually came here to get banned and interrogated by Blizzard GMs, however this was kind of just a rumour. It was likely that no player was ever intended to go here, only GMs at Blizzard. The island itself doesn't have any NPCs except for a few critters, but something that is even more disturbing is that there's actually a graveyard on GM Island. There is a bunch of tombstones that is right next to the building. I'm not exactly sure what this means, perhaps each tombstone represents something, but I'm not sure what. Perhaps it is GMs that got fired by Blizzard, it's kind of impossible to know at this stage. Number 5 on this list is the KARAZHAN crypt. Guys, this has been a major secret in World of Warcraft for a long time. Unfortunately today it's pretty much impossible to get into. However, this is one of the most insane secret zones that has never actually been officially released into World of Warcraft. If you guys don't know what the KARAZHAN crypt is, it is basically a giant underground raid, or at least it has been in development for a very long time. At the graveyard in the Deadwind Pass area next to KARAZHAN, there is actually an underground passage that is blocked by a gate. If you try and go past the gate, you can clearly see that there's something going on past the gate, which I think piques a lot of WoW players' curiosity. However, this gate is bolted shut and there's no way to get past, except for a very big oversight by Blizzard. When you're a ghost, you can actually go through certain objects, such as doors and gates. If you manage to turn yourself into a ghost form, you can actually get past the gate. The simplest way of turning yourself into a ghost is by jumping off this tree until your HP reaches 0. So when you do that, you can actually release your spirit, and since your body is very close to the gate, you can actually resurrect on the other side of the gate, and you are free to explore the KARAZHAN crypt. I think when World of Warcraft Classic gets released, I think that this will actually be patched, but in the beta you can actually do this yourself. As you can see here, this is actually a really big area. There's this very long underground passage that goes downwards, where you can see a bunch of skeletons and mummies. It's really creepy to come down here by yourself, and there's not much music, so all you hear is the ambient sounds, which is kind of off-putting. These passageways go down very far, and there are a lot of points of interest in this place. As you can guess, this place is big enough to be a raid. In fact, this was theorized to be a 40-man raid in World of Warcraft Classic, but unfortunately, Blizzard never actually fully developed this. However, you can still see there's a lot of work that has been put into this. If you just put in a bunch of NPCs and bosses down here, you can very easily imagine how this could be a real raid. I would argue that this place is actually creepier than Naxxramas, because Naxxramas is kinda colourful considering there's a lot of purple and green. However, this place literally looks like a level out of Resident Evil. To build on the fact that this place is pretty scary is this pile of bones that stretches pretty much to the top of the ceiling. There's a bunch of corridors and underground passageways that lead to other rooms, but if you swim through this green water, you can actually see something that is pretty disturbing. There's a bunch of hooks coming from the ceiling that are holding up bodies that are floating upwards. This is probably one of the most disturbing places in World of Warcraft. I think it's pretty creepy coming here by yourself. It just feels like you're not supposed to be here. They probably thought this place was a little bit too creepy for World of Warcraft. Number 4 on this list is the secret farm. So guys, way off past the coast in the hinterlands, there's actually a very secret place. If you continue swimming on the coast of hinterlands, you can actually come up to a very interesting place. That is the secret farm. I have no idea what this farm was used for, or what Blizzard was intending to turn this farm into. Whatever plans they had, they never actually finished it, because this farm is completely empty, and it's just in the middle of nowhere on the coast. More than likely, this is just a cool little Easter egg that Blizzard put into the game, and it's kinda cool to come here and chill out if you're on the Horde. Number 3 on this list is the Caverns of Time. So guys, as we all know, the Caverns of Time was a Burning Crusade instance. However, it was actually put into the game in World of Warcraft Classic, just that there was a big door in the way that wouldn't let you get through. However, on the backside of the mountains that contained the Caverns of Time, there was actually a secret way to get up. If you go to this specific part on the back of the mountain, you can see that there's some architecture that you can climb up. By jumping up in between the mountain and the wall, you can actually traverse your way up and get above the Caverns of Time. Once you're here, if you go to the other side, you can actually clip through the terrain, and if you have enough speed, you can actually jump into the Caverns of Time itself. Once you're here, it's pretty amazing to get into. Many WoW players back in the day were absolutely amazed to see what a crazy zone this looked like. WoW players up until this point have never seen anything like this. World of Warcraft was a pretty much par for the course fantasy setting, but the Caverns of Time was space themed and was a huge teaser for the Burning Crusade expansion. That being said, this is not a carbon copy of the Caverns of Time that we have today. In fact, the Caverns of Time in this version of World of Warcraft Classic had a giant hourglass in the middle. This hourglass actually got removed and changed into something else in the Burning Crusade and onwards, but this version of the Caverns of Time is unique to World of Warcraft Classic. There are of course a bunch of portals going to dungeons and raids here, all of which of course you cannot enter, but the fact that this got leaked and discovered in World of Warcraft Classic made the WoW community freak out as to what this exactly was. Number 2 on this list is the Edge of the World. So guys, what happens if you swim out at sea as far as possible? What will happen to your character and what does it look like? Well, it turns out doing this is actually pretty easy. If you're in Durotar and you roll a character, you can see this for yourself within a matter of minutes. By going to the southern part of Durotar and then swimming outwards, you can go past the fatigue line, and if you resurrect and come back to your corpse, you can actually make it all the way up to this part of the sea that is not in the fatigue zone. It's pretty curious that you can actually access this part of the sea that is this far, but you don't actually take fatigue damage. You're actually in a shallow part of the ocean, even though you're not, and you can continue swimming. The further along you swim, the more weird stuff you see. There's a bunch of holes in the ground where water should be that you definitely should not swim into. If you swim into, you'll probably die, so make sure to avoid the holes in the water. But if you make it past that, you can actually see the edge of the World of Warcraft map. By coming here you can stare off into the void, and it's just a really amazing thing to look at. If you continue swimming down, you can actually find a stretch of land that you can walk on. Discovering this as a kid, I was absolutely amazed to find this. However, that being said, it's probably going to be patched in the future. I just found it very interesting that the edge of the World of Warcraft map looked so amazing. Okay guys, so number 1 on this list is early GURUB. GURUB was one of the best raids in World of Warcraft Classic. However, it is not released on launch. I believe the GURUB patch was actually midway through the World of Warcraft Classic timeline. However, that being said, if you go to this specific part of the outside of the entrance of GURUB, and you go down this path, then jump up this tree, making your way through here, you can actually get into the actual zone of GURUB without going into the instance. By dropping down here, you're actually in the uninstanced version of GURUB, which is similar to the official GURUB, however not quite exact. This is a completely empty version of GURUB that doesn't have any NPCs or bosses, but there are some pretty key differences, like the altar of Hakar is completely different, as well as a bunch of other places that are different in the actual official launch of GURUB. You could kinda say that this is a beta version of GURUB that you're exploring. However, that being said, a lot of these places are probably going to be patched and changed. However, as of this stage on the World of Warcraft Classic Beta, these are some places that you can access. Well guys, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like down below. This is vaulty signing out.